Hey there, it's Will Vaughan from Your Career Mastery, and in this video, we're going to talk about how you can get a great performance review rating from your line manager, either at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year. Let's get into it. Now, the first thing you need to do when it comes to setting yourself up to get a great performance rating is understanding at the start of the year from your manager, what are the expectations, what are the big rocks and the big things you need to go after, what your KPIs are, and making sure that they're tangible and measurable and that you understand what they are. Now, I just said a lot of things, so bear with me, let's break that down. So essentially, the big rocks for the year, these are the big meaty projects that you want to go after as part of your role. So you want to make sure you clearly define with your line manager, what are the key things you're doing? What are the key projects? What are the key initiatives? What are the big things that you are working on as a team? The big projects you're collaborating on? Can even be things that you're not necessarily driving or leading in your role, but you're a key stakeholder to certain projects, and pulling them off and making them successful will drive big outcome for the business, and therefore it's an important one for your role and important for your manager to be across it as well and align with you on it as a priority. You also just want to align with your line manager on expectations. So what do they expect from you throughout the year? What kind of communication do they expect? What kind of meetings do they expect? What kind of updates do they want from you? How regularly do they want them? What do they expect you to bring to your regular or weekly or fortnightly whips or meetings that you might have with them? How do they expect you to contribute to the wider team and the wider business? You just want to understand. Set up some time with your line manager to say, what is your expectations from me and my work, and how we can work to make sure that we're all set up, we're all on the same page, we're all pushing in the right direction. So align with your manager on their expectations, align with your line manager, I'm getting tongue twisted here, on all the big rocks and the big projects for the year. You also want to align with your line manager on your development plan. So usually for a 12-month period, you will have a few key things as part of your development that you want to tick off, which might be skills you want to improve, projects you want to contribute to, competencies you want to build, courses you want to take, all that great stuff. So usually have 2 to 3 points of key development areas that you want to go after, whether it's public speaking or some other specific skill, leadership, whatever it is. You want to align with your line manager on what your dev plan is. So make sure that, again, at the start of the year, you're really clear, you're all set up, you're ready to go. They are across it, you are across it. There's no nasty surprises, everything's in there, everything's been signed off and agreed upon, and you can use that as your source of truth throughout the year to check in on, which brings us to our tip number 2 in terms of getting a great performance review rating, which is you want to have regular check-ins with your line manager on all your big rocks, your dev plan, and all the key priorities to make sure they're all tracking along, they're all on schedule, or if they're not on schedule, and it's touching base. So my key thing here is that the last thing I would ever want for my performance review is to get to the end of the year and have my review meeting with my line manager and have any surprises come up in that meeting. I don't want any surprises. If there's feedback to be given, I want that feedback all throughout the year so that I can course correct and change and improve my ways of working on my communication, or improve the timelines and the schedule of a particular project that might have fallen behind, or shift priorities if a project is no longer a key priority and I need to bring some other project into my big rocks for the year. The last thing you ever want is to find that out in your development or performance review meeting. So that's why at the bare minimum, you should have quarterly check-ins with your line manager against all the things you set up at the start of the year to make sure they're all still agreed upon, they're all still a priority. And that could include your dev plan, your big rocks of the year, and also just your general ways of working and your expectations of what your line manager might need. So much can happen in a year in the wider business or in the broader economy that can affect business priorities. Maybe you work for a business that makes food and a factory blows up. Maybe you change line managers throughout the year. Maybe you switch teams. There's always going to be a reason why priorities might change in the business. So you need to make sure you're checking in with your line manager or your most senior person that you report to, just to really make sure that all the things you're working on are the right things, so that when you get to your performance review at the end of the year, like I said, there's no nasty, sneaky, lurking surprises in there. You're across everything. You've checked in all throughout the year, and you don't just have to have the quarterly check-ins. You can check in with your line manager every week, every fortnight, but then you can also have those formal 1-hour sessions every quarter to have a really deep dive discussion on all the key things you're working on and making sure that it's all still, tracking along in the right direction and meeting their expectation. My next tip number 3, I think it's tip number 3 that we're up to, is really just to nail your key projects. So it goes without saying, if you want to set yourself up for a great performance review, You can have your dev plan all set up. You can align on all your big rocks of the year. You can understand their expectations. But if you don't do the work, or if you just really slack off, it doesn't really matter that you had all your stuff set up at the start of the year. If you don't nail your key projects, then you're not really going to get a great performance review rating. So at the start of the year, you sort of lay your foundation, right, of how you want to work with your manager and understand how you're all set up for the year and aligning what you're working on to the business priorities. But you want to make sure that you actually go and smash your projects. Make sure they're successful. Hit your KPIs. Make sure your KPIs are measurable so that you've got the best chance of hitting them. Now, there will be things that happen throughout the year that will affect your ability potentially to hit your KPIs that will be outside of your control. That's totally fine. That happens. Life is messy. Life is chaotic, and business is especially chaotic and it's full of surprises. But if you can have that regular discussion with your line manager to ensure that they're across all the things that are happening that are outside of your control, you're able to pivot where necessary, but they'll understand that things will happen that aren't your fault, that can affect your KPIs, but you want to make sure you have that conversation with them in real time to make sure they understand the full context, and that at the end of the year, when they assess your performance review, they are best placed to have all the information to do the reasoning and to do the justification about why you can get a great performance review, even in spite of maybe not hitting your KPIs, because there are certain factors that are outside of your control, and they understand that because you took the time to give them the context on the situation. And my last tip, I think I'm up to tip number 4, I lost track, but essentially what you want to do is you want to collaborate with your line manager on all your key projects all throughout the year. So you don't necessarily want to take all your big rocks that you aligned on back in January or whenever it was, and then just go work in the corner and not involve them. Through your regular whips with your manager, through maybe your quarterly discussions, take the time to ask for their thoughts, their feedback, their input. Collaborate with them, because the more that they feel invested in the outcomes that you are trying to drive, the more chance they'll probably have of being successful, especially if they're a subject matter expert. But 2, they'll also feel invested in the outcome. And if the outcome is a flop, then they will have to own part of that as well. So it's a great way to involve them in their KPIs, make them feel invested in all the great work that you're doing, and also to share the responsibility. Because I think as specialists, sometimes in our roles, we think that it's on us to just deliver everything. But actually it's our manager's role to get the most value out of us and to help us drive our performance. They're there to support us. So you want your manager, who may have more expertise or a bit more perspective and wisdom in the field of work that you work in. Not always true, absolutely not always true, but in many cases can be the situation. So you just want to make sure you involve them in all the work you're doing so that they're across it, but they're invested in it, they've contributed to it, and they're as much a part of the project as you are. So I'm Will Vaughan from Your Career Mastery. Hope you found this video helpful. I wish you all the best of luck for the rest of the year. Hope you absolutely smash your performance review out of the park. Hope they give you a bonus, they give you a pay rise, because I'm sure that's what you deserve if you're watching this channel and you're interested in growing your professional success. Again, hope you got value from this content. If you did, don't forget to hit subscribe. More videos coming out each and every week to make you a more successful professional. And I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.